Donald Trump and Elon Musk are crashing the US economy, and you need to be prepared to start growing some of your own food. That's why I'm here to teach you how to do it on a budget. Hi, I'm Kendall, and this is part 3 of my series on how to start a victory or food garden for as cheap as possible. Today, I want to talk about one of the most common questions I've gotten on my previous 2 videos, and that is, how do you choose what things to grow in the first place? This is obviously one of the most important questions that you have to answer right out of the gate as you start your garden. So there are 3 different factors that you need to consider when choosing what vegetables to grow in your food garden. What you and your family will realistically eat, how much space you have to grow in, and what things are most likely to skyrocket in cost due to Donald Trump's tariffs or other economic policies. So the first factor is usually the easiest one to answer, but also the hardest to stick to, and that is deciding what you and your family will realistically eat. When we are inundated every time we get on any social media platform with these big, elaborate photos of people's beautiful gardens, especially now that AI can generate such incredibly realistic pictures that we're not even just being inundated with pictures of other people's actual gardens, we're being inundated with pictures of gardens that do not and could not even exist in the first place. It can be really easy to get sucked into the desire to want to grow as many different things as possible and have as beautiful of a garden as possible. That is a trap. Please do not fall into it. You need to sit down and think through not only what vegetables that you love, but the other people in your household, particularly your children. You know them best, and kids tend to be the pickier eaters. So what vegetables can you realistically get them to eat? Those are the vegetables that you should focus on growing. The second factor is how much space do you have to grow in? So first of all, if you are in a situation where you have very limited space, whether that's living in an apartment and having to do only in containers or just having a very tiny garden plot, you should strongly consider looking for container varieties of whatever vegetables that you are going to grow. Many different vegetables will have a container variety that is a much more compact plant. It typically needs less vertical support. It just overall is a much easier plant to take care of when you have a much smaller space. And when you're looking at either the plant label or the seed packet label, it'll tell you right on the label whether it is a container variety. Even if you aren't in an apartment or you aren't doing container gardening, you should still take space into account. So for example, unless you have a ton of space or you have the time and the resources necessary to build the infrastructure to do vertical gardening, you should avoid growing any vegetables that are vining in nature. So things like pumpkins, squash, cucumbers, those take a ton of space, particularly if you're going to let them grow along the ground. If you want to grow that type of plant, however, and you need to make sure they don't take up, 10 foot in any direction, the other option is to build the infrastructure necessary to do vertical gardening. You can grow vining plants vertically. And in a future video, if there's interest, I will talk about how to do that. I have done that for very, very cheap in my garden, and I'm happy to walk you through how to do that in the coming days. Third, probably the most important factor if you're growing your own food in order to survive the economy under the Trump presidency is to think about what vegetables are most likely to go up in cost because of Trump's tariffs. And that mostly means thinking through what vegetables are we getting from Mexico that we can easily grow on our own. When you think about vegetables coming from Mexico, the one that always comes to people's minds first is avocados. I'm going to tell you right now, just don't even worry about that. Growing avocados is not a thing that happens in a single season. Avocados grow on a tree, and it takes a long time for a young avocado tree to grow to the point of bearing fruit. I can talk about how to do it in a future video if there's interest, but that is not something that you are going to do in a single growing season. However, there are several vegetables that we get primarily from Mexico that do grow in a single season. A ton of our tomato varieties come from Mexico. So if you are a big tomato person, definitely plan on growing tomatoes. Bell peppers, strawberries, cucumbers, and squash are also really important ones. If those are an integral part of your or your family's diet and you have the room to grow them, definitely consider prioritizing those plants because those are all plants that we get more than 50% of what we consume as a nation come from Mexico. So those are the ones that are most likely to have their price skyrocket. What other questions do you have about starting your food garden? Let me know in the comments and I'm happy to address it in one of my future videos. Thanks y'all. See you in the next video.